Welcome back to my tutorial on learning GameMaker in 2024. This is step 2. Thus far, this is what we have. When the game starts, we have a little tutorial, a set of instructions telling us what to do. When we hover over the note, they disappear. And if any of the notes end up leaving the screen, like this one's about to do right now, the game restarts. So that's our base mechanics. And we are going to be building on this in this tutorial. We're going to be adding a score system, some sounds, because right now it's just totally quiet. And we're also going to add keyboard controls instead of mouse controls, where we get to like control something moving around on the screen instead of using the mouse. So let's get into it. Let me close that. So first, let's start by adding a score and score text on the screen. And again, if you see me looking over here, I'm just looking over at my notes during the tutorial. So score, let's go to our title, the title room. And in the room's creation code, where we already have one global variable right here, we're going to add another global variable. Call this one global.points equals 0. And again, we use global variables to have a variable that anything in the game can access and change. We're now going to create a new object. Create object. Call this object lowercase o, capital S score, o score. And add a draw event. Draw. And in this draw event, we're going to write the following. Comment display points. The function draw underscore set underscore font. And at this point, I'm going to stop saying underscore. You can just see it on the screen. Make it a little easier. Draw set font, parentheses, f instruct, which is the font we created in the last video. Draw set color, c underscore white. Or black. Yeah, let's make it white for now. We'll be changing that in a moment anyway. Draw set H align far left. Draw set V align. Remember, H align is horizontal alignment, V align is vertical alignment. We're going to do this one far middle. And then draw text. We're going to say we're going to draw the text wherever this object is located. So X and Y. We could also put in numbers here if we wanted. But we're just going to say, hey, draw this wherever we place the object. And then the string, we have to use the string function because we're going to be converting a number to text. And the number is global.points, that variable that we just created. Double end parentheses, semicolon. So here we're using a new function called string. And what this function does, that it takes a number, like we had global.points equals 0, right? Right, well, let's imagine we have like 15 points. Well, we can't use draw text and just write global.points because this function requires a string variable in this location, and this is integer or real number variable. So we need to turn this into text. And the way we turn this into text is we use the variable string, open parentheses, close parentheses. And that takes that number and converts it into the text version of those numbers. Let me delete that. Now we're going to add a create event, tell it where we want it located. Let's say, well, add a comment, location of score, X equals room width divided by 2. That places it in the middle of the room horizontally, and Y equals 32. 32 pixels from the top because we want the score kind of near the top of the screen. Close that. We're going to open our game room, our game. Instances layer is selected, and we're going to drag OScore into the game, and we're going to run the game to make sure everything looks okay. Okay, you can barely see it because it's white. Let's close that. And it's still there though. I'm going to, just to make sure everyone watching the video can still see it, I'm going to change this to black. There we go. That's our number of points right there. Now you notice when I hover over notes, that number doesn't go up because we haven't added any code to increase global.points yet. But when we do, that number will change. So let's close out of that. Now in our oBlock object, which is the notes, it's called oBlock. In the code where we destroy the notes, in the step event, where it says disappear when mouse touches it, we're going to add a line of code to increase the score. So before we destroy the object, let's add a line of code, global.points plus equals 1. So that increases that variable by 1. And also the color, now we can test the score. We should. Every time we change things, we should test it. So let's test it really quick. And when we hover over these notes, that number goes up. So that is working. However, black doesn't, it sort of matches the color scheme. The color scheme I have is kind of like tan and the notes are kind of a dark brown. So let's make it so all the colors look coherent. So remember how we made the colors for our instructions? Let's go to our instruct object and remind you. Our colors is this variable called color that we created. And we made that color here, make color HSV, and we sort of created a color by ourselves. We are going to change it so these are so this is a global variable, so that we have a standardized color that our entire game can use. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to cut this line of code. I'm going to just highlight it and either right click and go to cut, or I can just do Control X on my keyboard or Command X to cut it so I can paste it somewhere else. And I'm going to move it to our title creation code. That's where we have our global variables. And I'm going to change this to a global variable, global.color. So now this is a variable anywhere, anything in the game can access and also change. So global.color, it's that same color. Now going back here in onInstruct, we got to remember to go to our draw event and change this in the draw event to global.color. And now we are going to go to, we changed that. All right. Make sure that's working first before we do anything else. So our instructions should look exactly the same, and they do. Nothing's going wonky there. Now in our oScore object, we can change the color from C black to global.color, and that will make the points that dark brown. Now you probably can't see it because it's small in the video, but it is a dark brown instead of a black color now, which makes everything match nicely. Next, we are going to make the notes fade away instead of disappear when we hover over them. Make it a little nicer looking. So open oBlock, create event. And we're going to declare a new Boolean variable called fade. Fade equals false. Remember, Booleans are on-off switches, and we describe them using the words true and false. True means it's on, false means it's off. And in the step event of that same object, we're going to adjust the code to add a condition. So right here where it says if distance to point mouse X, mouse Y is less than or equal to 0, we're going to add another condition to the same line. So after this end parentheses, I'm going to hit space, and I'm going to write either the word and, or I'm going to write double ampersand sign. And both, it means the same thing. It means and. It means check both the first condition and this next condition that I'm going to write. So you can do either. I like using double ampersand, but you can write the word and. So we have if distance to point mouse X, mouse Y is less than or equal to 0, and open parentheses, fade is off or fade is false. And we do that by writing bang fade, or that exclamation point fade. And now this will check to make sure both of these conditions are met before it runs this code. So first, it has to make sure that we're hovering over it, and we have to make sure that fade is set to false, which in the creation code it is already set to false, so that's great. But what this does here is it allows us to add a fade out without it messing up the point system. But first, before we do anything, let's just make sure the game works. Everything should work exactly the same. Nothing's really changed. Yep, everything's working fine. But now we're going to remove this instance destroy code right here, just remove it, and add instead after global.points plus equals 1, fade equals true. So after we hover over it and it gives us our point, it'll change fade to true, so this condition will no longer be met, so it will not like forever keep adding points. Now, what will happen if we don't have that there, if it just says global.points plus equals 1, if we run the game, you'll see that we'll get 1 point every frame of the game. And it's just like, look at that. Look at that number go up. We need to make it so fade equals true, fade equals true. This condition is no longer met by turning it true, so it will only give us 1 point because it'll give us the point and then change it to true, and so that condition won't be met. See? Now it's still only giving us 1 point. Now the notes aren't disappearing anymore. That's where we're going to add some extra code underneath it. So we can write a new comment, fade away. We're going to write if fade, meaning if fade is true, open curly bracket, close curly bracket. I always like to do both at the same time. Indent. If image underscore alpha is greater than 0, close parentheses, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, image alpha minus equals 0.05, semicolon. And after this if condition, I'm going to add else, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, instance destroy. So image alpha is something new here. Image alpha is a built-in variable of this object or this instance of an object. And what it does is that it checks if the object has a sprite image, which it does. And if it has a sprite image, it can change the transparency of that image. If image alpha equals 1, it means it's fully transparent, fully visible. If it equals 0, it means it's fully transparent or invisible. If it's 0.5, it means it's 50% transparent. If it's 70% transparent, again, like 1 means fully visible, 0 means invisible or transparent. So what we do here is, hey, if fade has been set to true, meaning we've hovered over it, fade is set to true, if our image alpha is greater than 0, meaning like if our sprite is visible, start making it less visible by 5% or 0.5 every frame of the game. Keep doing that. Else, meaning image alpha is 0 or less than 0, destroy it. So the moment it is invisible, destroy it. Now we can run the game, and you should see a little fade out for the notes when we hover over them, but it'll still only give us 1 point. Yes, there's a pleasant little fade out for the notes when we hover over them. We can add sounds to the game to make the game just appear more lively. It's a little quiet right now. We're going to be using sounds that I made, and you can access the sounds in the same place where I linked the images for the game. And you can download that asset folder to your computer. I suggest the desktop so you can access all of them. There's 2 types of sounds that we're going to be using. Sound effects for when the notes get played or when we hover over them. And we're also going to add some music. So right-click on sounds in the asset library, go to create, and then go to sound. And we are going to name it SND, lowercase SND for sound, capital N for note, and then 0. This is note 0. And sounds are exactly what they sound like. They're assets that the game can use to make sounds during the game, and they're just like objects. We create the sound here, and then the sound can be used anywhere in the game that we want it to. So right over here, we have the name of the sound, and then these 3 dots are where we can load the sound from our computer. So you need to locate that on your computer. I have, there we go. I have the folder for everything here. The last time we used assets, oh, did I miss my assets here? Oh, yeah. It's not appearing because we're looking for sound files. If I said all files, it would be there. Yeah, but sorry, forgive me. There's the last time we accessed images, it was from gameplay, right? Now there's a separate folder for sounds. There we go. I was a little confused there for a moment. So the sound that we're going to load up is SND Note 0. It's the same name as our object, and you can click a little play button to hear it. That's the sound that we're going to be loading up. All right, now, so that is loaded up. We're going to go to our O block object, And in the step event, we're going to add a line of code right where it says global.points plus equals 1. We're going to add a line before fade, and we will write audio underscore play underscore sound. Audio play sound. Open parentheses, now the name of the sound we want it to play, which is lowercase snd, capital N for note, 0, comma. The next argument we need to add to this function, as you can see down here, the first is the sound ID, the next is the priority. For a game that does not have that many sounds, I don't want you to be worrying about what priority means, just write 1. And we're going to be writing a priority of 1 for all of our sounds in the game because there's not that many sounds, so don't worry about it. And then comma, and then we need to tell the game if we want the sound to loop over and over again, or if we want it to just play once here. So we are going to write false because we do not want it to loop. We just want it to play once. So this is a new function for you, audio play sound, and this is a function you will use a lot in GameMaker. Whenever you want a sound effect or music to play in your game, you need to use this function. So we are going to run the game and see if it works. So the little ding ding, ding 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 ding. I can't remember what key I played this in. Is it? There we go. So we're getting sounds, which is good, but we are going to do something kind of cute. We're going to have it play a different note or a different sound depending on what type of sprite the object has, because the different sprites, as you recall, are different notes. So we're going to have something different play depending on which sprite is being displayed. So we're going to start by creating some more sound assets. So we have SND note 0. We're going to create 4 more sound assets, and there's a very fast way to do this. You can right-click sounds and click create sound, name it. You can also just highlight this and hit Control or Command D. So I have a Windows computer, so it's Control D. That duplicates. And I'm going to just hit Enter. Duplicate, then hit enter, duplicate, hit enter, duplicate, hit enter. So now I have 4 more sound assets. They're all assigned the same sound from our computer, but we can go in there to each one, click the 3 dot. Oh, we can also change the name. So we want this to be SND note 1, and we want the sound to be SND note 1. We're going to go to the next one. We want this one to be SND note 2, 3 dots, SND note 2. We want this to be SND note 3. 3 dots, SND note 3. And the last one, you can guess, SND note 4. SND note 4. Yep. Now in the O block step event, we're going to change where it plays. We're going to change what it plays to be a variable. So instead of giving it an asset ID for the sound, we're going to replace that with just a variable named called note. And don't worry, we're going to declare it in a moment. In the O block create event, write the following. Indent a little. We're going to create a local variable, var note number equals I random range 0 to 4. Image index equals note number. And note equals, this is a funny one, asset get index, open parentheses, open quote, SND note, spelled precisely, close quote, plus string note number, double end parentheses, semicolon. So we start by getting a random number between 0 and 4 and storing it as a local number called note number. Then we set the image index to that note number. The image index is the sub-images here. So this is image index 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it'll set the image index here. We can actually get rid of this right here because this is the same thing. Sorry about that. Image index equals note number. It says a little red underline. So do I have something misspelled here? I don't think so. Maybe it'll fix after I run the game. Oh, it's because I don't have a semicolon here. That's a comma. I had a typo there. So I add a semicolon there, and yep, there we go. The little red underline disappeared. So we get a random number, we assign the image index to that number, and then this variable note gets declared, and we use a function called asset get index. This takes a string and turns it into an asset name, because these assets on the right-hand side aren't strings, they're asset names. So we're going to say snd note, and then it'll say which number in the form of a string. So it'll turn it into a string. So if it says 0, it'll now read snd note 0, snd note 1, snd note 2. And then we'll get that asset name, and we're going to give it to that variable note. And so it'll play that random note. So it all depends on which image we have displaying as dictated by this random number. Let's run the game and see if it works. So for this one, different note. Yep. Yep, see, it's the same image, it gets the same sound. This way, if it is sub-image 0, like these 2/8 notes, if it's sub-image 0, we are going to get snd note 0. If it's sub-image 1, we're going to get snd note 1. If it's sub-image 2, we're going to get snd note 2. That's why we have 4 sounds for snd note, 5 sounds for snd note, and 5 sub-images for our images. It's all matched up. Now we're going to add some music. We definitely need some music for a game about music, right? We're going to make a new sound, create sound, call this one snd capital M for music. And we're going to assign that music file, which is also called snd music. Hit play. You'll hear it. Sort of soft classical music. And then open our title room, our title in the creation code. I'm going to add a comment called play music. And I'm going to write if, open parentheses, bang, audio is playing. So it checks to see if the audio is not playing, snd music. So it checks to see if the music is not playing because we've added that little bang at the beginning. Double close parentheses, open curly brackets, close curly brackets. If snd music is not playing, then we need to play the music. Audio, play sound, snd music, priority of 1, and we do want it to loop. So we write true there. So audio is playing is a great function. It just checks to see whether sound is playing or not. If we don't add the bang before it, it just checks to see if it's playing. If it's playing, we can like stop it here, for instance. But since what we actually want to do is check to see if it's not playing, we add the bang at the beginning, the little exclamation point, and then if it's not playing, it plays it. And the reason we have this here is for if the game restarts, it won't restart the music. The music will just keep playing wherever it's at. So let's run the game to see if it works. So we have the soft music in the background. And the sound of the notes fading away and being played. I want to point out that if, creation code here, if we didn't have this line of code, for instance, if let me comment that out and it just said audio play sound, I wonder if anything would change here because we're restarting the game. Let me have a note reach the end. Here it goes. See, it restarts the music there. Probably because we have game restart. Either way, we're going to be changing game restart soon, later in the tutorial. Instead of we're going to have it just go back to the title screen. So that's why we need to have this here, so the music just plays and doesn't end up restarting. So that's it for sound. The only thing to watch out for with sound, and this is just a warning when working with GameMaker, is to make sure that a sound doesn't repeatedly get played, especially if it's in a step event. So if we open OBlock, you'll notice we do have the sound in a step event, but we have it so it only gets, this function only runs during one frame of the game. If we had this, for instance, without this fade condition that gets turned to true, for instance, let me remove that, then it would play indefinitely, just like it would add points indefinitely. So listen to this. This is going to sound horrible. Which is not what we want. We only want it to be played one frame. So we have coded it in a way so this function only runs during one frame of the game. It's just something to watch out for. Just because you set it to not loop doesn't mean that that function won't get run every frame of the game unless you have the code managed in a way so it only runs that function during one frame. So next, we're going to make an object that we can control with a keyboard instead of using a mouse to hover over it. And that's important because you need to learn how to control movement of an object in GameMaker. It's very common in like role-playing games or platformers to control a character on the screen. So let's learn how to do that here. We're going to start by creating a new sprite. Right-click sprite, create sprite. And we're going to call it lowercase s, capital key for keyboard. And we are going to import the appropriate image, which is keyboard.png. And we're going to set its origin to be middle center here. Middle center. We're going to create a new object and call it lowercase o, capital keyboard, capital K for keyboard, and then set the sprite accordingly. And we're going to add a step event. And we are going to write a lot. We're going to write all of the movement code in one go here. So if you need to pause the video to catch up with me, go ahead, and I'm also going to explain all of this in a moment. So first I'm going to write a comment. Get inputs for key variables. I will write, I'm going to create some local variables or temporary variables. Var key underscore write equals keyboard underscore check, open parentheses, vk underscore write, close parentheses, semicolon. So what this is doing, it's creating a temporary variable called key write, and then it's using a function called key check, which checks to see if a key on the keyboard is being held down any given frame of the game. And the key that it's going to be checking is the right arrow key, vk underscore write. Vk stands for virtual keyboard. Don't worry about it. It just means the right arrow key. We're going to do this for the left, down, and up arrow keys as well. Var key left equals, we're going to add something different here, negative keyboard underscore check, open parentheses, vk underscore left, close parentheses, semicolon. The reason we have a negative here, so this keyboard check, what this will return is true or false, or the way GameMaker actually handles it is with the number 1 or 0. So if the right arrow key is being held down, it'll give us the number 1, and so key right will be assigned the number 1. If the left arrow key is being held down, it will also return the number 1 or give us the number 1. So we add a little negative before it so that we actually get a negative 1. And that's how we're going to handle directional input, where positive means right, negative means go left, which works with the rooms in GameMaker. We're going to do the same with up and down here. Var key down equals keyboard check vk down. Var key up equals negative keyboard check vk underscore up. Remember to add that negative before this keyboard check for key up as well. I think I have that all right. New line, comment, calculate horizontal and vertical movement direction. We're going to create another temporary variable, var h underscore move, horizontal move. We call it h underscore move. Be sure not to write h move, by the way. Oh, actually, that doesn't matter. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Var h underscore move equals key right plus key left. Semicolon. I'm going to add another comment here, -1 0, or 1. So what this does is that it adds these two numbers up. So if they're both 0, H move is going to be 0, or the horizontal movement will be 0. If the right key is being held and the left key is not being held, we'll get +1. If the left key is being held but the right key is not being held, we'll get -1. If both of these keys are being held down at the same time, 1 plus -1 is 0. H move will also be 0. That means if we're holding the right and left arrow keys at the same time, it means we will not be moving either direction. So that's a great way to make it so if neither key is being held at 0 or both keys is being held, it is also 0. We're going to add var vmove equals key down plus key up. New comment, same thing, -1, 0, or 1. Same thing here for holding down the keys or only one key at a time. It makes this +1 if we want it to move down, -1 if we want it to move up. Because remember, the top of the room is 0 in GameMaker, and as you move down, the number increases. And yeah, so that's where we get our direction, H move and V move. New comment, how fast and in what direction. We're going to add another local variable, var HSP equals H move times move underscore speed, which is a variable we're going to declare in a moment. Var VSP equals V underscore move times move underscore speed. So here I'm writing HSP, meaning horizontal speed. I do not write H speed because that is an actual named value in GameMaker. You can see how it turned green. So I'm not going to use that wording. I'm just going to write HSP, but I mean horizontal speed. And same with VSP for vertical speed. And what this does is that it takes the direction we want to move. If we want to move right, it's +1 times move speed. So if our move speed is 5, it'll be +5. If H move is -1, it'll be -5. If it's 0, move speed will be 0. Same with V move. If it's +1, we'll get +5. If it's -1, we'll get -5. And if it's 0, we'll get 0. And then new comment. Do it. Change this object's X and Y locations. X plus equals HSP. Y plus equals VSP. And this is great because if this HSP is negative, if you're adding a negative number, it's the same as subtracting it. So we can just do plus equals here, and HSP, if HSP is negative, it'll reduce the X value. If it's positive, it'll increase it. If same for its vertical or Y position, if it's positive, it'll increase it. If it's negative, it will decrease it. All right, so we've already explained keyboard check here. So that's the only new function. We do have to declare some things in a create event because we have move speed here. So we're going to add a create event, and we are going to write move speed equals 7 plus a new comment, how fast to move, meaning how many pixels per frame of the game. We're also going to write X equals room width divided by 2 because we want this keyboard object to start centered horizontally in the game. Now we're going to open our game. Instances layer is highlighted, and we're going to drag O keyboard in there. Again, the only thing that matters is its vertical position because it will get centered into the game room because of our code. So I could even put it like up here and it'll get centered over here when the game starts. So let's run the game, and you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move it. And we have a moving object. Now this moving object doesn't do anything because it doesn't have any code to do anything yet. And it's also a little too high. We'll need to lower it a little bit. So let me lower it slightly, maybe right here. So now that it can move, let's make it so it plays the notes instead of the mouse. Talking a lot makes your mouth dry, so I have to take a swig of water. All right. Go to the O block object to its step event, which is already opened. And we're going to change this function where it says distance to point mouse X, mouse Y, less than equal to 0. We're going to instead replace this entire condition right here. We're going to keep the and not fading, condition. We're going to change this one, open parentheses, to place underscore meeting, open parentheses, x, comma, y, comma, o keyboard, close parentheses, close parentheses. Two open parentheses here, double close parentheses there. So that works out. And let me, O keyboard. Oh, I misspelled. I was wondering why this wasn't matching. It's the wrong color here. I was wondering what I did wrong. I misnamed it in the asset library. I had a typo. So I'm gonna right click that asset and go to rename and make sure I spell keyboard correctly. There we go. And so in a moment, yep, changed red, so now it is spelled correctly. And that's how you troubleshoot in GameMaker. You just sort of pay attention to the colors and the underlines a lot. So now what this is doing is using a new function called place meeting. What this does is that it checks to see if the boundaries of or collision area of this object is at all overlapping with the boundaries of this object, O block. And if you go to the sprite objects, and if you open collision mask, you see we changed it to be full image, to be the collision mask for this object. We're also going to open S keyboard and make sure that its collision mask is the entire image. It's set to automatic right now. I'm going to change it to full image just in case. So if this keyboard object overlaps at all with this object that is using this function. And everything else should work, actually. So if we run the game, it is the keyboard now that is going to make the notes disappear. And our mouse is not going to do anything anymore. Beautiful. We're going to have to change the instructions. So let's go to the oInstruct object in the draw event and change the instructions so that they read arrow keys, colon, move the, can't spell today, move the piano and play the notes. This needs a comma to be grammatically correct. So yeah, move the piano and play the notes. And that's all we need there. Should we add anything else now? Let's just leave it at that. So let's run the game, make sure everything is working. We run the game this often to make sure if we have any typos or errors in our code, we'll get like an error message. So everything is working. We want the instructions to appear above the piano. It doesn't really matter too much in this game because so much of it is transparent, but I still want to teach about layers. If you go to our game, open that up, we have an instances layer and a background layer. You can have actually more than one instances layer, and they can be named different things. So we're going to start by highlighting the instances layer, and we're going to delete the keyboard object. I just click on it and I hit the delete key on my keyboard. We're going to delete O_score. If you click on it, you don't know which object it is. If I click on it and go over here, it shows us what object it is, O_score. I'm going to delete O_score and oInstructions from the instances layer. The only thing we're keeping here is oControl. We're going to go over here to these two circles here. If you hover over it, it's the create new instance layer, and we're going to create that. And we're going to give it a new name. And you can either hit F2 function key on your keyboard or right click it and go to rename layer. And we're going to call this top layer. Capital T for top, capital L for layer, top layer. And we're going to make sure it's at the very top. You can actually click and drag these layers to be in a different order. And so pretty much any objects placed into a layer that is above other layers will appear on top of whatever objects are placed in layers below it. So it's like a layer cake. And I am going to, I don't know if I'm going to change anything else there. I kind of like it that way. Here in my notes, I have changing the instances layer and calling it bottom layer, but I don't like that. So we're going to make sure the top layer is selected, and we're going to replace our score object and our instruct object, and in the instances layer, I removed the keyboard object. Let's just move the keyboard object back. Now let's run the game and see if everything works. All right, so we have, everything is working. Arrow keys, move the piano, we have the score system, we have sounds, we have keyboard controls, and we don't have any bugs. Fantastic. That's step 2. In our third and final step, we are going to learn about collisions. We're going to make it so that there's an object that keeps the keyboard object from leaving the room. So it'll move and then stop wherever we place like a border object, and collisions are very important in a lot of different games, so that'll be very valuable to know. We're going to add a title screen, and I'm actually going to teach you how to publish your game on the web. So tune in for when that gets published, and good luck. Can't wait to see your progress.